Sparta choked to death on the mathematics of its own inflexible demographic laws. This collapse was driven by Oliganthropia, a condition where a state's core citizen population shrinks to a point of permanent, terminal decline. This was the central paradox of the Spartan state. The very exclusivity that defined their elite status functioned as their greatest structural vulnerability. The foundation of this system was a rigid economic prohibition. Full Spartan citizens, known as Spartiates, were legally forbidden from engaging in any form of trade, commerce, or manual labor. They relied entirely on state-assigned Helot laborers to work their land and generate the agricultural surplus required to sustain the military class. In this system, a citizen's sole economic function was to extract enough yield from their estate to pay strict monthly food quotas to their military mess. This population chart visualizes a citizenship funnel, a sequence of rigid biological and economic choke points that every Spartan faced from birth. The first choke point was the state-mandated exposure of infants deemed physically unfit, immediately shrinking the size of every new generation. Survival led only to the agoge, a training system characterized by high mortality and a strict selection process that further winnowed the available manpower. The final and most lethal choke point was an economic barrier, the Syssitia, or mess hall dues. Missing a single payment carried a permanent legal penalty, the immediate stripping of all citizenship rights. This meant a single bad harvest or a failed crop cycle could instantly and permanently eject a trained soldier from the military pool. The devastating earthquake of 464 BCE and decades of constant state warfare accelerated this attrition until the numbers could no longer be sustained. Under Spartan law, it was strictly illegal to replenish these numbers by naturalizing foreigners or elevating freedmen to fill the gaps. With the population graph trending only downward, the Spartan state was operating under a mathematical death sentence. After defeating Athens in the Peloponnesian War, Sparta inherited a vast imperial hegemony that covered the Greek peninsula. This massive territory was held by a microscopically small population of full Spartan citizens. The state faced a severe logistical crisis as it struggled to deploy enough men to garrison and defend multiple fronts simultaneously. To maintain control, the Spartan high command was forced to compromise its core ideology by deploying non-citizens to hold distant territories. They turned to the neo-demotes, freed Helots, and the perioikoi, free non-citizens, to serve as mandatory stopgaps for the army. The state also developed an increasing and expensive reliance on hired mercenaries to fill its ranks. Sparta maintained this empire through a carefully managed illusion of invincibility, projecting a strength its actual manpower could no longer support. By the year 400 BCE, the composition of the standard Spartan army had shifted. A phalanx was now mostly gray, filled with helots and mercenaries, with only a thin veneer of full Spartan citizens at the front. In this hollowed-out state, the famed Spartan military reputation functioned as a desperate psychological weapon. The high command was terrified their adversaries would realize exactly how few actual Spartans remained on the battlefield. Look at the overlapping shields and identical helms in this formation. The phalanx was designed to mask individual identities and class distinctions, allowing a few dozen citizens to appear as an entire army of elites. Hegemony was maintained primarily through the sheer terror the formation inspired before any combat actually occurred. The Spartan army had become a paper tiger, reliant on enemies breaking and running before physical contact could expose their lack of depth. In 371 BCE, the illusion finally met reality on the fields of Boeotia, where the Boeotian League confronted the Spartan line. The Theban general Epaminondas approached the battle with a cold, analytical assessment of the Spartan formation. He understood the rigid tradition of Greek warfare. The most experienced, elite troops were always positioned on the right wing. This certainty meant that King Cleombrotus and the 300 elite Hippies would be anchored on the far Spartan right. This pocket of the battlefield contained the last concentrated density of full-blooded Spartan citizens. Epaminondas realized that he didn't need to defeat the whole army. Destroying the right wing would break the Spartan state permanently. The Theban battle plan was a surgical strike designed to exploit Sparta's negative birth rate. Epaminondas deployed a massive 50-deep infantry column on his left wing, opposite the Spartan right. The elite sacred band led the impact. He held his remaining units back in an echelon formation, creating a refused flank to prevent Spartans from wrapping around. An initial cavalry skirmish drove the Spartan camp followers back, creating disarray in the Spartan lines just as the Theban column hit. The brittle 12-deep Spartan formation completely shattered under the crushing kinetic weight of that massive 50-deep Theban column. King Cleombrotus and 400 of Sparta's most experienced citizens were killed in the crush. In a single afternoon, Epaminondas wiped out an irreplaceable percentage of Sparta's remaining population. Seeing the elite right wing annihilated, the surviving Peloponnesian allies abandoned the field. The Theban army followed this victory by marching directly into the heart of the Peloponnese and entering Messenia. Thebes ended the Spartan system by liberating Messenia, which instantly stripped the state of its entire captive Helot labor force. Without Helots, there was zero agricultural output to sustain the Spartiates. No harvests meant no mess dues, triggering the universal and permanent loss of citizenship for the survivors. The Battle of Leuctra was the fatal stress test on a fragile socioeconomic machine.